Today in the bunker, we're going to build a store suitable for the Underhive or the Wasteland. To begin with, we need to make sure that this will fit on one of the standard 1 foot by 1 foot tiles that we've made. If we make it so that the walls are slightly raised to fit over these raised details, that means it'll work on this, it'll work on a concrete tile, wherever we put it, a mat, whatever. So we will start getting some measurements and figure out how big we want this to be. As is common with most of my builds, I'm going to change directions slightly once I got started. I'm going to put a door in the front, and what we're going to do is add these upright pieces. I'm going to take and make the windows out of this hardware cloth. It's like 1/4 inch mesh, so it'll be kind of like a security grid sort of thing. And I will stick the ends into these and kind of glue all the pieces together with the wire sticking in it. It'll be really strong and great. We'll make a piece to go over the door here and make like a frame, and it's going to be fantastic. So let me get that put together and we'll see what we get. Alright, there's the basic carcass put together. I just put PVA glue on all the joints, pinned it together. The front's a little bit wonky. I probably could have used a little better method to cut those, like cut a solid piece and then cut a hole out of it, but we got what we got. We're going to run with it. We can cover up all of these sins later with corrugation and rivets and all kinds of good things. So we're going to let this dry and we will see what we get. Hopefully it'll be strong enough, and we will see what happens. And while we're waiting for that to dry, I just want to cover, if you've never worked with this stuff before, it cuts very easily. I just use EMT shears. And I always leave, when I try to build things, I leave the little pointy bits, just cut that very edge off so you get the little pointy bits. You can push those down into the foam core. Or if you're using regular foam, they push right into foam. And it makes a pretty good joint. You can glue that. A lot of times I don't bother to glue it. I just glue everything else around it and it holds pretty well. So it's a good technique, and I encourage you to try it. The shell of the building is pretty firmly glued together now. I mean, it's still a little bit wobbly because of its size and the fact that it's foam board, but even the sort of disjointed front pieces went together fairly well. Some of them moved a little bit, but that's fine. We'll fix it. We're going to clad this in various materials, so it'll cover it up. Plus, it's supposed to be kind of scrappy anyways. One of the first things I'm going to do is all of the exposed foam core edges, at least on the outside, maybe not the top and the bottom, but I may do those too, are going to get covered. I just cut some strips, 5mm wide strips, out of a drink carton, and we're just going to glue that in place. And then that'll at least take care of those edges. And you could use, if you have zip ties the proper width. I don't. Mine are slightly narrow, unfortunately. So they'll be on there, but just not on those edges. You could add rivets. You could do all kinds of things. Just go nuts with it. When it comes to adding the texture, of course our friend corrugated paper and the corrugations that I make with the roller always come in handy. But just to break it up a little, I've got this drywall tape that I bought. I probably found it 10 or 11 years ago. I don't even know where I got it, and I haven't been able to find any more of that, but it's so old that the glue on the back doesn't really work. It's not sticky. But a little bit of PVA holds it down nicely. I used this in my last build on the upper deck. Not to be confused with what you do at somebody's house at a party you don't like, but it makes a interesting texture once it's painted. So don't be afraid to mix it up. And the pieces here with the zip ties I added with super glue because PVA doesn't hold those so well. Just in case, all you have is the regular drywall tape, which is great stuff. I love this stuff. You can also use that that's two pieces kind of stitched together there, so that'll add a nice kind of a diamond plate sort of texture. So, you know, don't be afraid to add that. It doesn't all have to be corrugations. I love corrugated stuff, but, you know, mix it up a little. After a few days of tinkering and gluing things to the carcass of this building, I think it's finally ready to get some paint. I'm not going to do an interior right now. I'm going to do some interior pieces that'll be maybe interchangeable. So we'll do that in a future video. But I just took and just glued whatever little greebly bits I had to the building. Here I built up, this is a case for a toothbrush, which it got broken, so I never even used it, so I just used half of it and then just glued pieces to it. The rivets are polystyrene rod. There's some piping that I had from a 3D print, but you could use a straw, whatever. Just little things. The plasticard I used, the riveting tool, which I have down here in the huge pile of my desk. Just took some more plasticard and then drilled some holes through it and took some paper clip and bent it to make those door handles. And then put a skylight on top. The NECROMUNDA novels talk a lot about skylights on the building, so I wanted to add that as just kind of a fun feature. And of course the roof comes off, so it'll be playable. And again, all of our exposed edges covered with the drink carton, just 5mm strips of that. And various plasticard and corrugated paper and whatnot. So we're going to go ahead and get this primed and start putting some paint on it. Alright, so after our primer coat, which I used kind of a slightly glossy brown paint, which took forever to dry, we're going to go ahead and start adding some brown in the little spots that I missed, and then we'll add some more colors and make it look all metallic and rusty, and won't that be fun? On top of the brown undercoat, I'm going to kind of damp brush it with a mixture of about a 3-to-1 mix of silver to black, maybe 4-to-1, and it gives it just kind of a dark gunmetal tone. And we're not going for excessive coverage, but just enough to just sort of give the effect that that's metal. So we'll do basically everything and start on some other colors. That initial overbrushing was a bit dark, so I ended up going back over it just with straight silver. You could probably just go from dark brown right to straight silver, just kind of overbrush it on there, and it would be fine. I think you could probably skip the gunmetal. It comes out too dark, and with this dark brown underneath it, it just lacks definition. So anyway, we're going to do that, and we're going to start picking out details and adding color to some of these panels to give it kind of a mismatched look. Because it's the Underhive, the first color we're going to start with, or I'm going to start with, is an underlayer of rust. I'm going to use a nutmeg brown followed by some raw sienna, and we're just going to apply both of those with the sponge. I go on with the nutmeg brown first, and then go pick out highlighted areas with the raw sienna, and that gives it a nice rusty depth. And we'll put other colors over that, but we're going to do the whole building this way because it's just kind of crusty. And if you wanted it to look newer, you could leave some of that off or leave all of it off. That would be not a problem. And just to show you how I do that, in case you haven't watched one of my previous videos, I just take a little bit on the sponge and put it on. If it's too heavy, you just take a clean bit of sponge and kind of knock it back, and just do that all over the model until you're happy with it. Once you have it all rusted to taste, you can either leave it as is. I got plenty of buildings that are just rusty metal, or what we're going to do is add some more color to it, mismatch panels, that sort of thing, give it more of a scrappy appearance, although it looks pretty scrappy now. But we will let this dry, and then we will actually apply some color. And there's our store finished. I added some posters and various bits around it just to add a little life to it, labels and whatnot. it really came out pretty good, I think. We're going to do an interior in a future video because I'm going to do an interchangeable one like Earthman Brick did for his latest build, and I'll put a link up to that because it's really a really neat idea. So this came out pretty well. Parts of it warped a little bit, but that's fine. You can either paint the backside with PVA glue and it'll kind of straighten it out, or you can leave it because it's a scrap build in the Underhive, so it's fine. One other thing I did want to point out, I started using some brown ink, and I used that to kind of accentuate where the shadows were, and also around the rivets. That really made those pop. So don't be afraid of ink. Ink is a neat thing to use, so I'm going to be using more of that. So I'm pretty happy how this came out. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope there's some useful stuff in there for you, and I thank you for watching.